I'm so glad that RFK Jr. dropped out of the race, because I didn't have to listen to him as much. I'm sort of annoyed that I still have to listen to him. But I mean, this is just, if you are trying to reach people in the middle, persuadable voters, I just don't think that this is their crew that's going to do it.
Hello and welcome to the Bulwark Podcast. I'm your host, Tim Miller, with Democratic strategist extraordinaire, author of Any Given Tuesday, New York tabloid maven, my friend Lis Smith. Welcome back to the Bulwark Podcast.
Hey, Tim. Thanks for having me. It's been a while.
We're going to get to RFK, Kamala's come strategy, Eric Adams, maybe Joe Burrow's haircut. One thing I didn't get to yesterday, Kamala on Friday was down at the border and gave a speech. And I know that this is something you and I were talking about a bunch during a special election, the Tom Suozzi election up in New York, which we were watching closely, and kind of the approach he took to immigration that was a little bit different. And it seems like that she's taking a bit out of his playbook. I just want to play one segment of what she was saying down at the border.
There are consequential issues at stake in this election, and one is the security of our border. The United States is a sovereign nation, and I believe we have a duty to set rules at our border and to enforce them. And I take that responsibility very seriously.
Like she's down there. It was serious. It was solemn. They have an ad, a very aggressive ad that they're running that was paired with it. What do you think? I mean, there are two schools of thought on this. That's why I wanted to bring it up. The Swansea school of thought was, let's try to cut against the vulnerability here. Let's talk about it. Let's demonstrate I'm going to take it seriously. Let's punch a little bit at the Republicans for not actually doing anything on this. And then there is the other school of thought that's like, anytime you're talking about immigration, you're losing. Literally talk about anything else. What do you think?
I completely disagree with the second one. If voters are telling you that something is a top issue for them, voters are telling you that they are concerned about crime, if voters are telling you that they are concerned about immigration, the worst thing you can do as a politician, elected official, is to tell them that their concerns aren't valid, that they're imagined, that they're fomented purely by Fox News. And unfortunately, that has been the approach of some Democrats on these issues in the past. In 2022, in New York, for instance, we got absolutely hosed in all these congressional races, in part because Democrats did not take voters' concerns on crime seriously. The Suozzi special election, which I was an advisor on, could have been a repeat of that. If Suozzi had taken sort of the DC mindset, or frankly, like the advice of a lot of people around here. Like, I got so many calls from these big political brains saying, why is he playing on the, Republicans' issues? Why isn't he just talking about abortion? And you know why he wasn't just talking about abortion? Because if he did, he would not be addressing by far and away the number one issue. And so what he did was, one, and what every Democrat should do on this issue, where immigration is a top issue for voters, is to, one, meet voters where they are, say, yes, we understand it's a concern. Two, talk about the solutions. And the solutions start with, one, securing our border, and then two, making sure that we have some compassion, that we allow people who are fleeing violence and persecution to have a good asylum process, to make sure that we are providing a pathway to citizenship for our dreamers. But three, and this is a really important thing, is you said that we took this on to minimize the vulnerability. We did more than that. Tom could not have had better instincts on this issue. And he said, I don't want to run away from this issue. I don't want to minimize the vulnerability. I want to go on the offense on it. And that's exactly what he did. And I remember one of the first weeks of the campaign, his opponent did an event outside a big migrant facility in Queens. And we saw it being announced, and we decided, you know what, let's go crash the event. Not literally crash. We basically just waited till she was done. Then he went out and stood in front of all the cameras. And it was sort of
this is like what I used to do outside of the W. Wasserman Schultz events that you went to back when I was an RNC rat fucker.
Right, exactly. But his approach was actually successful in this instance. And it was one of those things where, like, it was sort of meta, where when we're preparing it in the minutes up to it, I'm like, this could either be a complete disaster, or this could be like a turning point. This could then be sort of a model for what Democrats do. And, when he did it, he just went and did like a total masterclass and talked about how it was really the Republicans who own the border issue now, because they, under Donald Trump's direction, killed our best shot at a bipartisan border deal in decades. Because they believe that more chaos at the border, more chaos in cities where tens of thousands of migrants are being sent, is better politically for them than a solution. And from then on, New York TV loved it, obviously, but it started to trickle out nationally. And then you saw other people jumping on this. And there's no doubt that it was a really brilliant political move by him. And it is one that I wish more Democrats were adopting. But I do think sometimes Democrats are a little bit scared of their shadow on this. They're a little bit scared of the activist groups, right? They don't want to be called racist or, xenophobic. They're also scared of talking about an issue where Democrats generally have been losing. But the only way we're going to win the issue is if we go out and try to win it. Like, we're not going to win the issue of immigration. We're not going to mitigate voters' concerns by pretending it doesn't exist, by telling voters, they only care about this because of Fox News. We've got to go take it head on. But not only that, call out the fact that the Republicans are the ones who are torpedoing any solutions just because they think it will help them politically.
And I also feel like Kamala has like a little bit of like leeway to do that without worrying about pushback from the left. I mean, partly because it's such a short sprint, partially just because of the credibility that she's gained. I don't know. And it feels like she's been doing that pretty well. I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, no, I agree. I think she has been. But generally when I talk to Democrats, whether they're running for statewide congressional office, I do still sense a hesitance about it. And I just tell them, please, I will send you the Tom Suozzi talking points. Chris Murphy did a great memo on this after Tom Suozzi won. That was perfect, pitch perfect. I think Chris Murphy and Tom Suozzi are the best messengers in our party on this, and would encourage sort of anyone who's curious about the messaging and the best way to do it to go back and read some of their interviews and their memos on it, because it is a great way of how we can take something that is a very big weakness for us and actually go on the offense, neutralize it, and maybe even win it.
While we have the Liz strategist hat on, you were maybe the biggest proponent of the Go Everywhere strategy that Pete executed. Obviously, Pete was talented enough to execute a Go Everywhere strategy and have it be effective. Not everybody can go and do 1 million podcasts and do 1 million interviews and not have it hurt themselves, as evidenced by JD Vance, who seemed to spend a lot of time going everywhere on podcasts and have a detrimental result. So the Go Everywhere strategy does not always work. But I do think there's a lot of conversation. We've been having a lot of conversation here at the Bulwark about this, about how the vice president and Tim Walz have not really been going everywhere. And I don't care about the DC elite media whining about how they aren't doing interviews with them. But I would like to see them in more, in different kinds of environments and different kinds of interviews, getting to different kinds of audiences. We've seen a little bit of that over the last couple of days. Kamala was on All the Smoke, which is a podcast by these two basketball players, Matt Barnes and Steven Jackson. That was on yesterday. I listened to that on the flight up here. I thought she did really well. Walz was on the We Rate Dogs YouTube, which I don't know, was I guess if you're into dogs, maybe you liked that. It was gauzy, it was nice. There's no harm done at minimum. What would you think about those two activations? Should they be doing more? I've been having people message me and say, Tim, you wanted them to do this, and now they did. Look, and I'm like, well, just doing one of these things doesn't really check the box. I'd like to see 20 or 50, but I don't know. What do you think on that?
Yeah, you're right. I mean, for those things to work, it's got to be sort of part of an all of the above strategy, right? With Mayor Pete, we weren't just putting him on a podcast about West Wing rewatches or whatever in a vacuum. He was doing that on top of talking to the New Yorker, going on MSNBC, doing every possible local Iowa, New Hampshire, South Carolina interview that he could, because those were the early states, Nevada as well. And so I think of those things, you've got to really have an all of the above strategy in today's fragmented media environment if you want to reach people, and you've got to meet people where they are. So I watched some of the clips from the vice president's interview in the podcast yesterday, and I thought she was really good. She was very comfortable. She seemed loose, but she was also good talking about pretty thorny issues like attacks on her race, questions about her blended family, questions about childhood trauma, not exactly light topics. And what it indicated to me is that this is someone who, when 30% of people want to learn more about you, should be going out and doing more interviews. Now, I want to be very clear. I am not second guessing their strategy. They've got a really great team around them. They've got, one of the best communications strategists in Democratic politics, Stephanie Cutter there. So I'm not here to be an armchair quarterback. But what I can say is that when I wrote about this in my book, Any Given Tuesday, this sort of dynamic and what was behind us doing it for Pete. What was behind us doing it for Pete was that the idea of like a 37-year-old openly gay mayor of a town of 100,000 people was so absurd, right? That he'd be running for president, that we needed to get him out there in front of as many audiences as possible because he was a very good communicator. And if people could see him, then they could be like, you know what? Actually, I sort of get it. I could see this guy being president. But on the flip side, if you don't go out there, someone else is good. And like with Kamala Harris, there's 30% of voters want to know more about her. If she doesn't go out there and fill that void, someone else is going to. And as I say in my book, either you feed the beast or the beast feeds on you. And so I think it's important to be very conscious of that dynamic. And I think what we're seeing is, baby steps toward doing a more robust interview media strategy. And I think it would be very smart. And to your point, it doesn't mean sitting down with Bloomberg. It doesn't mean sitting down with, I don't know, even
Axios. Sorry, exactly. Axios.
Right. But it means doing a ton of local media, but doing some things that hit some of the elites. There's no harm in doing the daily podcast, right? So many people listen to that around the country. But then doing some stuff that's lighter, maybe more entertainment, stuff that's more sports related, whatever. You really, it's like a buffet. It's a buffet. You just want to grab, have a little bit of everything, do a little bit of everything. And the more you do, the more people you're going to reach. And it doesn't all need to be like super serious interviews. But I think
Sure. You could do, for example, like a very not that serious kind of like breezy, never Trumper kind of gay YouTuber, who will have a pretty friendly interview with you. Like that might be one idea. I don't know. We're just kind of brainstorming.
And, the thing about the media environment now is you can't like do one interview and expect it to dominate in the way that it has in the past. Like an evening news interview, like a sit down with Katie Couric, and when Palin did that, and that then dominated the news for days. But one thing we've seen is that you could do an interview with a breezy, gay, never Trump Republican, have a really good moment, or maybe a really bad moment, but let's say really good moment, and then suddenly it's picked up everywhere. It's picked up, the provenance now of clips doesn't really matter. It's like if you have a really good moment or a really bad moment, it could be on a podcast that 2 people listen to. But if it is remarkable in one way or another, it can go everywhere and travel everywhere. So I think that there are a number of different ways to skin a cat, but I've got this one over here. But there are a number of
that's not an appropriate metaphor on JD Vance debate day. You're not going to be an armchair quarterback. I am. I'm a podcast host now, so I'm going to armchair quarterback with my losing record. So you can push back. I do think there's just like a little bit of caution that I don't quite understand. Like she was so good on all this book. Like there are a couple of things I learned. Like I've been consuming every Kamala thing. She talked about her being a child of divorce in a way that I haven't heard her talk about it before. Mm-hmm. And I thought that was very human and vulnerable, and like it's an experience a lot of people have. I liked that. She talked about praying every morning. And, she talks about praying, but just like this notion that like she wakes up every morning and prays. Like I'm sure she's said that before at like some, at a religious function, but just kind of casually talking about it, like a couple of guys on a podcast. Like it was sort of showing her in a new light. That's like, oh wait, no, this is like legit. Like this is something that she legitimately cares about, right? And so I just wish that they would. I think that there are like 100 places like All the Smoke where where the interview is going to be pretty like just more revealing than it is challenging. And I would like I could use like 4x what we're getting.
Matt Bai had a good column about this in the Washington Post, that a lot of the traditional interviews now sort of fail viewers because it's become a game where it's like you're just trying to challenge the candidate and get a viral moment,
or it gets you onto hypocrisy. You used to be for this and now you're for this. It's like, okay, great. Yeah. It's
right.
a Tim Russert. We're all doing a fake Tim Russert imitation, 30 years later.
And then the candidate goes in with a script of like, these are the moments I'm going to have. And like, it's sort of them talking past each other, but you don't really learn more about the person running for office in a way that you could with a longer form interview, like, we saw with the podcast yesterday. And so to me, it does speak to why you should sort of go outside of like just doing CNN, MSNBC, traditional news, and do longer form things, because people can learn a lot more about you beyond just the policy bullet points. And given that people are still want to know more about Kamala Harris, who she is, what she believes, whether they should be comfortable with her, I feel like doing those sorts of things where people can see, a little bit more into, I don't want to say like her soul, but like see a little bit more about what she's about. I feel like that would be really helpful, because then people could see, okay, she's not like a radical leftist. She's not someone who wants to remake, the fabric of American society. She's just wants to go out, help the middle class, helps working middle class Americans get by, and I think it would be very good for her.
Hey, y'all, if you love this podcast and want to listen to all Bulwark podcasts ad-free, join Bulwark Plus today. You can click the link in this description. You'll get the best politics newsletters in the business, and you can become a Bulwark Plus member right now. We'd appreciate it. You've been also doing some advising to the DNC on third-party stuff and on RFK. So we have to do a little bit of RFK being so weird content here. This weekend on Saturday, he was at an event called Rescue the Republic. The types of people at this event were really something. You had Rob Schneider, the aforementioned Rob Schneider, the failed SNL actor who said that Dikembe Mutombo died because of the vaccine. You had Jordan Peterson, the crazy pro-Russia Colonel Douglas McGregor. Tulsi Gabbard was there. Russell Brand was there. He's found God, apparently. He was doing the Lord's Prayer. Lara Logan, who has totally gone cuckoo with her conspiracies on various things. Jimmy Dore, your buddy, far leftist, who's now kind of jumped the horseshoe over to the right. My man, Pizzagate Jack Posobiec. Like, this is the crowd that RFK is hanging out with. I just want to play one clip from his remarks there.
During COVID, we saw the greatest attack on America's liberties and our constitutional right, and at any time in American history.
That's Bobby Kennedy's son, who thinks that the greatest attack on America's liberties in American history was COVID. Did he not read anything that his father said during the civil rights struggle in the 60s?
The thing about these guys, I know you'd sent me like a tweet from Del Bigtree comparing this event to Woodstock, right?
Yeah.
And these guys like think that they're like such edgelords, that they're so provocative, that they're truth tellers. And like, I will give them this, they're very weird and off-putting, but like ultimately the thing about them is they're so predictable, they're so boring. And like, how many times, like, you and I could have scripted that in advance, or we could have told you exactly what they're going to say. They're going to say mask mandates are bad, the jab is bad. They're going to make some, I don't know, edgy jokes about trans people because, no one has ever done that before. They're going to talk about how their free speech is under attack. And like, I'm so glad that RFK Jr. dropped out of the race. So, because I didn't have to listen to him as much, I'm sort of annoyed that I still have to listen to him. But I mean, this is just, if you are trying to reach people in the middle, persuadable voters, I just don't think that this is their crew that's going to do it.
I don't know. I have to disagree with you, Liz. There's one thing that I don't think I could have scripted. Here's RFK at the Trump event in Michigan over the weekend.
The average girl in this country is now reaching puberty between 10 and 13 years old. That's 6 years younger than a couple generations ago, and it is the youngest of any nation in the world. We are destroying our children, and that was the major reason. His commitment, Donald Trump's commitment, to make America healthy again.
Couple questions. Why do JD Vance and RFK keep talking about women's vaginas and their periods? And two, is Donald Trump committing to make America healthy again? What is that?
Okay, thank you. Those are two things I was thinking. One, I don't know. It is so creepy. Like, again, these are people who talk about, my lady parts more than I think about them. And, given RFK Jr.'s history with women, which has certainly been in the news recently, that's probably something I would stay away from. I mean, he might consider himself an expert in some of these matters, but that's all I'll say about
there
that.
is the little black book. There is the little black book.
I mean,
and God love him, I guess. I mean, not his poor wives, but yeah. I mean, I guess he has seen a lot of vaginas. It seems like.
But then the idea that Donald Trump is the one who's going to make America healthy again, like, give me a fucking break. Okay. Donald Trump is a guy who tried repeatedly to repeal the Affordable Care Act, which is, expanded healthcare to millions and millions of people. And there's no indication that he wouldn't try to do that again if he were elected. Two, it was under his administration that you saw all these deregulations where, corporations could dump more crap into public waterways, where corporations could put more crap into food. And three, like, let's be real, the guy is like a walking Big Mac. Even when he caters his White House dinners, it's like almost exclusively with fast food. We know that his diet consists 100% of fast food. Like, there's nothing about that man that screams healthy. There's nothing about his record that screams healthy. And I think the whole MAHA thing, which is like the worst like acronym, Make America Healthy Again, is like just rooted in, I don't know, trying to paper on a reason for Kennedy to attach himself to Donald Trump and be relevant. And the reality is, why is RFK Jr. attaching himself to Donald Trump? Because he wants to be relevant. And the Democratic Party rightly is like, you're a fucking freak. Like, you are so off-putting. Your positions on so many issues, your personal conduct is really beyond the pale. And good riddance. Like, go over there, have fun with it. But I think that embracing him is a strategic mistake from Donald Trump. And RFK's embrace of Donald Trump is a betrayal of the people who were true believers and who did think that RFK really was maybe someone who's going to shake up the system and try to end chronic disease. And it's really, he's, selling his soul because he wants to get a few more cable hits and have a little bit more of a platform.
This is a great point. He doesn't want to shake up the system. He's not an outsider. He desperately wants to get back in the system. This is his way back in. He wants to be relevant. That's a very important point. I'm glad you brought
He made the ultimate. He made the ultimate backroom deal. The backroom deal that he, ran against that entire campaign. And this one other thing he said over the weekend, it was hilarious. Like, he said, the Democrats, they spent tens of millions of dollars against me to make me seem like a crazy person. And it's like, no, we spent $0. Like, you just made yourself seem like a crazy person. When I started at this project, we thought maybe we'd have to run ads or do mail. We didn't run a dime in ads. You know what our operation against him was? We had two press people the entire time.
Very talented press people, though. Very high quality.
Which goes to show that, on these campaigns, you don't need a cast of 1,000. Granted, not everyone gives you as much material as RFK Jr. does, but it was a very traditional rapid response. And that was enough to really take him from being fairly positively viewed to being very, very negatively viewed.
Yeah. Congrats to the two VHQPP, very high quality press people that the Democrats paid to just play RFK talking, basically. But very well done. Y'all, I love America and looking good, and there's nothing better than having clothes made right here in the USA. High quality clothing and activewear like shirts, jeans, dresses, jackets, and so much more. And that's what you're getting with American Giant. Y'all, I just put in an order for a bunch of just basics, the stuff that you want to wear around the house every day. I got a long sleeve tee. I got a short sleeve tee. I got some new little brown pants, stuff to wear down to Dat Dog at the corner. It's a little hot dog joint in Ferret. Something to wear down to maybe the Kingpin if I wanted to have a beer with my buddy Steve, or just to wear around the house, sit around, watch football, binge on MAGA rallies on my computer that I have to watch so you guys don't have to. No matter the situation, I've been feeling good in my new clothes from American Giant. From joggers to sweatpants to half zips and pullovers, the collection is the ultimate in durable comfort. They make slim fit pants, that's what I like, but also relaxed. They also have sweatshirts to accommodate all different body shapes, premium, ultra soft, lightweight fabric for year-round comfort. When you buy American Giant, you create local jobs in towns that help stitch communities together. Get 20% off your first order at american-giant.com when you use code BULWARK at checkout. That's 20% off your first order at american-giant.com, code BULWARK. I can't let you go without we have to do rapid fire on our three favorite topics. Number one, what is happening in the New York mayor's race? I mean, this is your world. It's not my world, not the New York mayor's race, I guess, with the New York mayor. And is he going to resign? Is Andrew Cuomo really going to get in? Or other people going to get in? Just what is happening?
I don't see him resigning. I really don't see a world in which Eric Adams steps down. Is Andrew Cuomo going to get in? Oh my God. This is the least favorite question I get. I wrote at length about this in my book. It wasn't the most pleasant thing to write about. Generally, when you're writing a book, you want it to be all about your victories, your successes, all the moments where you're the hero. And I ended up opening and closing with the Cuomo stuff because it was really important. And I learned a really big lesson, which is that sometimes you get in too deep, you end up doing things you are not proud of, and you end up working for some bad people. And I do not think that Andrew Cuomo should be in a position of power again. I don't want to talk about this forever. I don't want to be in every story about it, but I do feel like people like me have a responsibility to say that, this is a guy who did not conduct himself honorably in office. When he was on the way out, I think you can learn a lot about people by how they conduct themselves in the middle of a crisis. You saw someone who was, erratic, who was very vindictive, who was untruthful, and who was willing to throw everyone around him under the bus if he thought it would help him just in the slightest bit. And I don't think if he runs for mayor, I don't think he would be running for mayor to improve the city. He'd be running for mayor to improve his reputation, and probably to get revenge on the people he thinks who wronged him. And it's a very Trumpian thing. It's very sad. I think he did do some good things as governor, but we just need to aim a little bit higher. This is the greatest city in the world. It's the greatest.
Does the greatest city in the world have anybody running it right now? It seems like half of the leadership is either indicted or resigned.
Yeah.
What's the gossip? Are there other people angling? Is there any hope?
Yeah. I mean, there are no names right now in the race that I think would be good. Some of them I think would be better than others. My hope is that there's someone out there who's considering it who is better than the names that are currently in there. And we've got some time, right? Typically this doesn't kick off until after the presidential race. And it's like if South Bend could get a mayor Pete, can't New York get a mayor Pete? Or I would take half of a mayor Pete. I would, but we do deserve better. And I really, it's really disappointing to me when I see smart people, whether they're in the donor class or sort of the, consulting class or even in the media say, well, maybe we need Andrew Cuomo. Why? Aim higher, do better, and say, you know what, we don't need to move from one scandal-scarred politician in Eric Adams to another scandal-scarred politician in Andrew Cuomo.
I love that. Okay. What the election coming up? I don't know if we got 30 something days. I'm a little bit more concerned than other people. I mean, I'd rather be Kamala than the other guy, but it's a little close for comfort. There's some other takes out there. You might have heard of Professor Alan Lichtman. He has the 13 keys system that he uses. He says we don't need to be worried. Kamala is definitely going to win. And so I'm wondering kind of where you fall on the scale. Are you satisfied by the 13 keys? Are you concerned about the polling at all? What kind of indicators are you looking for?
I mean, I would put more faith in my cat's political predictions than I would Alan Lichtman. I mean, this is when you realize that social media was maybe a mistake. You get these guys just going out there and suddenly they're masters of the universe. They do these creepy videos, put their faces on t-shirts, develop these completely bizarre, keys to win the election that I don't know, are sort of nonsensical. So that rant about Alan Lichtman over, it's going to be close. It's going to be close. I think people, sometimes I see people criticizing Kamala Harris and her team for saying that they're the underdogs in the race, but we've got to run like we're the underdogs. There's a lot at stake. There's a very good shot that we lose the Senate. And the thought of a Donald Trump winning and losing the Senate and Republicans potentially keeping the House is like real nightmare fuel. And so I do think people should be thinking that Kamala Harris is behind and be doing everything in their power to help her get ahead, and that it's incumbent upon also the campaign to really leave everything on the field. And that's why I hope, I think we will see them going out and, doing more interviews, being more aggressive in their communications, because you don't want to look back the day after the election and been like, yeah, maybe I should have been doing a little bit more.
Finally, we have one additional. We have many cosmic connections, but one of them is Joe Burrow. You're a Cincinnati
Right.
Bengals fan. I'm an LSU fan. Over the summer, he bleached his hair like a late 20s twink going through an early midlife crisis, and since then, the Bengals haven't done that well. His passing percentage is pretty high, so he's doing pretty well. But his completion percentage, is pretty high. But I'm concerned. I'm concerned about Bleach Blonde Joe and the Bengals. How are you feeling better or worse about him than you are about Kamala Harris?
I am concerned about the Bengals. I am not concerned about Bleach Blonde Joe. I don't.
You like the look?
I'm not going to betray anything about our group text, Tim, but we may or may not have a group text that is devoted to Joe Burrow. And I may or may not have hit it up the second I saw the Bleach Blonde Joe. Because that photo did some things to me. I was very excited about it. Look, I think.
But you don't think that he's using this power of, kind of like this, you have two power sources, and like one of them is your football power source, and one of them is your sexuality power source, and maybe the bleach blonde brought them out of balance, into imbalance.
I actually did think about that yesterday. Whether if you are doing this stuff too much, does it then take away from it? But no, I sort of see it like David Beckham did similar things. And I think it's cool for straight men, for attractive straight men to have some fun with their appearance. And in a sport that is as small C conservative as football, I think it's sort of refreshing to see. As long as I got a little nervous in the off season when I was seeing a lot of him at Fashion Week. And I want him to be very focused on football. I want him to be doing that. But I think, if he wants to have some fun with his hair, he's got a gorgeous head of hair, then go for it. And, I loved him with when it was a little longer last season. I loved it when it was buzzed and bleach blonde. And I love it now when it's the tips. And I am pro Slim Shady Burrow.
All right. There's our 1 minute Joe Burrow thirst at the end of the podcast that I know you all are waiting for. Thank you to my friend Lis Smith for coming to the podcast. We'll be back tomorrow with another Democratic bigwig to do a recap of the debate. Hope to see you all then. I also just want to say that as we're coming on, there's a report from Barak Ravid, a senior White House official, telling him that the U.S. has indications that Iran is preparing to imminently launch a ballistic missile attack on Israel. We had Bill Kristol talking yesterday about how foreign policy is going to be part of this election over the next 5 weeks. So we will be monitoring everything from everything around that, and potentially having guests on to discuss it as necessary. So in the meantime, our thoughts are with folks over in Israel and in the Middle East. And we're looking forward to seeing y'all back here tomorrow with another great guest. Hopefully I can get fully walls pilled tonight. We'll see how it goes. Thanks to Lis Smith. We'll see y'all soon. Peace.